Okay, today we're going to be looking at the time and expense module, and we're going to start in the first tab, which is labeled Time. This tab serves two main functions. First of all, it provides a recording of all of the time that is being displayed for the currently selected employee on the week we're currently looking at. In this example, we're looking at the last week in December in 2014. And we can see that during that week, Howard Rourke had several time entries listed, and we'll see not only a summarization of his time in the grid at the top, broken out by hours that are chargeable, hours that are marked no charge, and hours that are put on internal projects, overhead projects, things that wouldn't normally be billable, like PTO time. So we can see a breakdown of those very easily, and also we have a dual functionality that this grid also acts as sort of a filter. So if we click on one of these days, what we'll see is we'll see 4 hours chargeable, 4 hours internal, for a total of 8 hours entered. And then by clicking on this day, we'll see that down below on our list, here is in fact the 4 time entries that make up those 8 hours. So where did they actually come from? And just as easily as we can create time, we could actually click on our little icon here and view a detailed selection of that time. And we will look at that detail in just a moment. The second main function that this screen serves is that it allows you a very simple mechanism to enter a time so that you don't have to worry about a whole slew of detailed fields. There is an option for that, but if you just need a quick and dirty area where you can just plug in a few fields and enter a time slip and be done with it, that can be done here. So what we can do is we'll select a day. So in this case, we'll look at Friday. And we'll say, well, what project do we want to enter time on? So we're going to select our Bradford Lake House project. And we should point out also that when we select this list, there's two things that are important. The first is that this list can be customized. So perhaps you're a firm that you like to work with project numbers instead of project names. Or perhaps you'd like to see both the number and the name in this little drop-down. So this is actually configurable in preferences. So if we go up to our master drop-down at the very top of the window and go into preferences, we'll go into preferences users and then go into our time expense screen. We'll select Howard Rourke if he wasn't already selected on the list. And at the bottom of the screen, we'll see this box right here, Project Value List Format for Time Module. So perhaps we want to see both, the number and the name. So we could very easily select that and save. And then when we come back to our time screen, we can go to enter our time slip again. And when we click in our project this time, we'll see that the list has been changed into a format that's more pleasing to the way we like to work. The second thing to point out is that this list will only show you projects that this person is actually on and that the project itself is still active. So you can rest assured that if you see it here, it's a valid selection. Same thing with phases. This will only show you the phases from that project and the phases that are actually marked active at this moment. Same thing with job codes. It will only show you job codes that are active and are set up as valid selections for this phase. The task description box, this field bears a little explanation, however, because there are two actual functions that this box serves. It plays a dual role. And the function it serves is dependent upon the project you select. This project allows you to enter either a task from a predefined list of tasks that are defined for this project, which you see is what it's doing now. So all of these tasks we have predefined on that project. Or it will allow you to free-form type a description for this task, or rather for this time entry. but not both. So the determining factor is if we actually look at that project, and you can see here we're already in our Bradford Lake House because we've gone there earlier. When we go to our Tasks tab, we'll see this checkbox here, Use Tasks for Time. This is the control that determines that. If this option is turned on, that box on the Time tab will only allow you to enter a task from the predefined list of tasks that we have at the bottom here. And we can see exactly the same selections that we had in the Time module. If this option is turned off, and we'll turn it off and save like so, then when we go back to enter our time entry, we'll just select our fields here again. This time when we click in the box, we'll notice there are no predefined selections. That's because now we can just simply type in a description. We also have an option here to say whether or not this slip will be chargeable or no charge. If the box is checked, it's chargeable. If not, it's no charge. And then obviously we can also put in the number of hours that we're entering the time entry for. Click our little plus button, and then we'll see the time appears. And we'll have a virtually identical setup for the expense tab. Same selection for who the expense will be logged against. And then a similar grid of the days, just like there was in the time entry. A similar date selection, just like there was in the time entry. And a similar mechanism for entering expenses. And again, as with the time entry, this is meant to just be a quick and dirty screen to give you a few of the basic fields you need to get a time entry entered. But there is a detail section which we will go into later. So very similar mechanism. The only difference is now we have added in an expense type, which is a required field for all expenses. And this list is predefined in preferences, and this is actually not a free-form type field. But again, the description will be. A couple of checkbox differences also. NR for non-reimbursable. So you can say that you want to enter an expense entry, but you might not necessarily want it to actually be billed out to your customer. So you can flag it so that the next time you invoice, it will simply be marked billed, and that will be the end of it. It won't actually contribute any values to your invoices. ER, which stands for employee reimbursable. So perhaps you had an employee have to drive out to a job site, and they had to pay to park their car with their own money. So they log that expense, and not only can you define whether or not you want to charge your customer for that with the non-reimbursable flag, but you can also then flag it to say that this is employee reimbursable. So you know that you actually have to pay your employee back at some point. The quantity, which is replacing hours in a time entry, becomes quantities in expenses. And the bill rate. How much are we charging for it? And the quantity and the rate will actually default a value based on the expense type you select and based on certain settings in preferences. And then similar to time, you can click the little plus button to save. And then you will have an expense entry.